What's up there, SEO pros? Today we're here with Micah Fisher-Kirshner, and what we're actually going to be talking about is some of the things around the big accomplishments that Micah's achieved. Um, he's actually the head SEO at a company called Zendesk, where if you guys don't know about this company, it's a pretty big company. And Micah, how long have you actually been there for?
About 2 years now.
About 2 years. Okay. So Mike has been there for about 2 years. I actually met him when we were answering questions in a community called Dumb SEO Questions, which I don't know if they changed it, if it's just SEO questions now. I think it says it on Google. It doesn't really matter. Um, Either way,
We still go by questions.
Okay, cool. You're still answering questions over there too, right, man?
Oh, yeah.
Cool. So I came up with a couple questions, just from some things that I want to personally know. I'll just tell you some of them right now. We can dive into anything you want. But some of the questions are, what are some of your biggest accomplishments that you've achieved through SEO? Who are the people you follow? What are some of the top tools you use? Where do you spend, most of your time, or what do you spend most of your time doing? How do you see SEO progressing? And another cool question I made was, if you could make one SEO tool, what would it do? But let's start out with some of your biggest accomplishments, man. Like, what are some things that you really spend a lot of time on, or you spend a lot of time on, and they've really achieved like massive results?
Oh, geez. There's so many that I'm kind of proud about and glad to have done. I think one of the ones I enjoyed kind of the most was essentially building an in-house A/B testing platform. This was back when I worked in the comparison shopping world at Become.com. And essentially, the site was pretty massive. We're talking a couple millions of pages, and a lot of pages essentially a very long tail. So we could actually run an SEO testing system, kind of like what you hear today with Rank Science and Distilled have two separate systems, essentially kind of an ODN, where you can actually run your own testing platform, assuming you're at a large enough size. And what I enjoyed about it is being able to see lifts specific to the changes I would make. So for an example, I was able to, one example test I ran was when rel pagination came out. There was a lot of kind of, I'd say, consternation in the industry about whether or not that was really needed, whether you could do it large scale, isn't just rel canonical preferable. And so basically got to run that type of test and see essentially what kind of results would come from it. And that one in particular was, I think, about 1% lift in traffic. So, and for us, traffic essentially led kind of a direct correlation with what was at the time kind of our revenue model, which was kind of a click in, click out. So direct revenue value in terms of all click outs. So having kind of that type of structure is probably one of the things I've been the most proud of, and be able to directly showcase what kind of lift that was. Beyond just kind of that one, I mean, there was a couple of others that we ran during the time that I was there, but that was probably the thing I've ever been most proud of. It was just so much fun. It was so early in kind of what people even talked about. I mean, this is 2007, 2008, so pre-Panda, essentially. So that's probably one of the most fun one I've done, and could actually directly see the results of one of the tests.
Nice. So, I mean, I think this kind of dovetails into the question of now, what do you spend a lot of your time on? Because, certain things are going to lead to certain results. And I'm sure, some of the big accomplishments that you're achieving currently are related to, of course, where you spend your most of your time. So would you say it's maybe more on page, more off page, more technical, and most of your stuff is probably all related to just that one company, right? You're not doing SEO anywhere else.
Yeah, that's correct. So I do in-house SEO, and depending on the companies I've been at, my focus does change. Um, Today, it's definitely more focused on site. But there's been cases in the past where I've focused much more on the technical end, or I focused on the external link building side. Just it has depended on what's been the in-house needs at the time.
Right.
But yeah, today's been for the most part on site. That's been the focus. Whether that's creation of new pages, whether it's getting buy-in, getting concepts across. Those are kind of some of the things that I would say is like a larger brand type SEO is a much more common occurrence needed across those types of organizations.
Right. And I think one of the big questions for me, Micah, is you probably spend a lot of time, doing similar things. And I would say it would be a result of being, in the same sort of situation doing SEO on the same website for a while, which, a lot of people don't get to experience that because they'll have clients maybe a couple months. They'll get new clients, or maybe they'll hand them over to white labeled services. Uh, I think it's kind of rare that you actually get to talk to somebody who spends, a couple years on SEO. So what are some things you see later on versus, maybe somebody who would see something like, only 2 to 3 months into things? Is it a lot of, creating new content marketing around the different long tails you're going for, and then doing a lot of off page, or what do you see there?
Oh man, I've almost hit 10 years worth of SEO at this point. Um,
Wow.
so yeah, so actually I worked in an agency for my first 3 years. So I've not just been in-house my whole time. I've actually gotten the experience, not necessarily the consulting side, but at least the agency side of things, some similarities and seeing the differences for that. And then in addition, this where I am at today is B2B. Most of my career has been more around the e-commerce side. So some ways, some of the granular focus has been a little bit different today at Zendesk, just because it's B2B. But for the most part, a lot of the SEO is going to be kind of similar. I would say on the whole, as having worked consistently in house for a couple of years, the joy that I kind of get out of in house is really you really get to focus and really learn about the products that the company has. You get to build up a culture around SEO. You're building in what those processes are going to be. So it's not necessarily just purely kind of provide a review and dash, but it's really helping to develop and foster a culture that really then cares about SEO, understands SEO. So it makes my life a bit easier, and I can do higher level work. So I'm not having to do this kind of the same kind of audit over and over again, maybe some tweaks here or there, but actually start to think of more and more creative ideas. Part of what I like in particular is really starting to think about what are the themes and the topical areas of a company, and what, if there's a lot of products, where do they fall under, and how that matches together, a bit of that site architecture, and how that's built out. Because I like to kind of, just instinctively for myself, put all these groups together and figure out how those need to be done in what way, working with obviously other teams for that, but with the mindset of as an SEO and how this is going to benefit the company and how it will rank better on Google as such.
Right. So for me, like when I think of creative ideas, I think of like, creating content marketing with content upgrades where people go in, they opt in for an email list that we can then use to remarket to them. And then I think of, omni-channel marketing, which, the different things you can do, which are going to help your overall, SEO by sending social signals and making sure that your branding's done correctly with, social media optimization and perhaps some remarketing through AdWords or whatever it is. Does that kind of fit the outline that you're talking about, or is it more of like customer surveys, or what would you explain that as?
No, I think that's pretty accurate. I think customer surveys can play a part too. I mean, it depends on what access you get and how valuable it is for said company. But yeah, I've worked. Well, granted, I kind of ran some of the divisions at one e-commerce company, doing rep management, social media, content as well, and having to merge all those together and how those channels are gonna help each other. And so having to think very high level slash holistically to say, all right, this project that I need to get pushed for, say, reputation management, will also have these side benefits to these other channels. Let's potentially let's work those in so that we're not just thinking one pure silo. Breaking those down and how those integrate is a great way to kind of, I would say, learn about SEO by being outside of it and then thinking back in how those niche areas within those different marketing channels can play an impact into SEO.
Right. So something that I think I hear a lot that people say, they want to get into SEO, they want to get rankings, they want to get traffic, but I feel like I hear a lot of things about PBNs and repurposing their content across 30 different tiers of Web 2.0s and just crazy stuff. And so personally what I say is like, look, it doesn't really matter as much as what you do as much as what you don't do. And I think it's because a lot of people just blindly get into SEO, they want to make money, and they're not really thinking about whether or not what they're doing is actually providing any value to people. What would you say are maybe some big mistakes that you personally have seen that, you know, even through your own experience, you could probably tell people to avoid, and not waste their time?
Oh man, so many different areas of this. Well, it's been fascinating. I think there was just an article that today or yesterday that Barry Schwartz was posting from the Black Hat forums and talking and kind of how even the Black Hats were essentially talking about having to create more content and more kind of branding focus with some of the stuff and spending money outside their normal area. Now, how much of that is true versus just posturing is another thing. But Google's gotten better over time, at least more flooded for all intents and purposes. The way that I'd say is, it really does depend on what you're trying to go for. If you're, a lot of stuff is kind of, you can do a lot of the Black Hat quick, dirty, but you may not stay for a while, or you're going to spend a lot of effort for those areas. Whereas kind of the white hat side, there's more of, I want to do this long term, focus on something, but also make the web a better place, really help to provide a true benefit and see kind of, from behind this computer screen, smile on other people's faces for the work that I'm doing, getting them to find the stuff that is beneficial to them. And so things that just, generally avoid is asking, is this going to really work for the long run, or is this easy enough to spot? To say that, is it really worth getting all these spamming links? No. Do no follow links matter? No. Avoid kind of a lot of the get rich quick type themes, because oftentimes those are just built on suckering people rather than getting them to really appreciate what it is. And so you can only sucker people for so long before somebody steps in. And so, if you're looking about getting into SEO, there's a lot of good resources that are out there. The hardest part, of course, is who do you trust and who do you distill it from? And I think that's generally has been the biggest issue as of to date for the SEO industry. Otherwise, you'd see a lot of standardization for the most part. And there's lots of myths that come around. And I know that between you and I, we've had our own disagreements about some of those too. about kind of what kinds of things work versus things that don't.
Naturally, yeah. I feel like a lot of SEOs have so much passion that they, um, even myself, I've had to learn through having such a strong opinion of something and then changing it. But I actually prefer having a disagreement with someone and then looking into it than kind of just blindly accepting something, not really having an opinion on it, and then just, kind of going with whatever somebody says. Because, like you said, the SEO industry is pretty crazy in terms of how widely available the information is. And there's a lot of people that I've noticed who are really good at talking and making it sound like they know something, but don't necessarily know for sure whether or not what they're saying is true. And so I think what happens is people go, okay, well, this guy looks like he has his stuff together. He's making money, but in most cases, success, from what I've found, is not something you want to necessarily look at as, okay, this is something that works just because this person's making money. There's tons of ways you can make money without really knowing what you're doing. Um, the problem is a lot of people use that to their advantage to end up selling an image or some sort of material to somebody else who knows less than them. And then those people go off and do the same thing. And so, you already know how it works. So this would be another good question. I mean, of course, I have tons of questions, but one of the questions I just thought of, which I thought would be kind of interesting to hear from you, is if somebody, was getting into SEO and they found Screaming Frog and they wanted to run a crawl and they, found a bunch of errors on a site, what would you say are some of the big or the easy wins that somebody could start tackling?
Oh, loaded question. I mean, I'm going to give you the standard SEO answer of it depends.
Yep.
Now, the reason is that it really does depend on the size of the site, what parts of your site is being impacted. So, one example I could say is maybe it's found a ton of 404 pages. And if your site's, let's just say 1 million pages and 100,000 of them are 404s, probably something you may want to look at and why that's occurring. It could be a 1,000-page site and suddenly you've got 20,000 parameters, 20,000 extra pages. Those are pages that Google doesn't need to crawl potentially. Like it could be your search pages, and that could be harming your website. It could be telling you that you didn't update your title tag, and they're all the same. There's a lot of potential issues. And, a tool like Screaming Frog is good at helping you potentially audit it quickly and give you some ideas, but it's very difficult to give you a set answer right away. Because it does depend on the situation. It may tell you, hey, you've not really updated all your meta descriptions. Yeah, probably helpful, but you may have some other issues you want to focus on first before you get to the meta description, because you may have duplicated your whole site by throwing your dev server and made it live, or your staging server. So, the priorities is going to vary depending on kind of site and your multitude of issues.
Right. I totally agree with that. And I also see a lot of people say, hey, look, I'm getting into SEO. I found all these problems and I'm going to start fixing X, Y, and Z. And then really just by doing something like making sure that you're no indexing all of your short codes that are getting indexed, or, template files or whatever you're getting, it's going to dramatically improve how Google crawls your website and sees you as an entity, and potentially help you rank a lot higher for a lot of your stuff. So I totally agree. It really depends. And I also have to say that constantly to people. And I really think I should just have that, like, before each of my statements. I should just have like a button that just says it depends, and then I can say what I'm going to say.
Buy it depends.io or something.
Yeah. And then just put that in front of all of the questions and put that on the site. I'm sure it'd do really well.
So what's the one that I think Ryan Jones does? Kind of the W2F SEO.com.
I haven't heard of it.
Yeah, it's basically like all, it just makes a mockery of all the kind of, tongue-in-cheek SEO stuff. It's pretty funny.
I gotta check that
Um,
out.
yeah. He usually posts them up on Twitter. Um, on top of that, one of the things that, is probably a little more helpful to consider is sometimes what I like to do when I'm starting up at a new company is just collect as much of the issues, everything at once, categorize them into kind of the clusters that I normally do, which is kind of content, links, content based, link based, and technical structural issues. Put them kind of all together and then really try to get an understanding of the business and what's going on before I start to assign all the work to me. Because I honestly, I have that sometimes as a personal issue and failings where it's like, I want to dive in deep, see everything, and then I get kind of problematic of like, okay, where do I go now? And I sometimes do the minor stuff rather than the big things. And so sometimes, it's trying to take that step back after rummaging through the pile that's in front of me and say, all right, what are actually going to be the big things that's going to be beneficial, whether it's driving the business or getting the buy-in I'm going to need later for some larger projects. Like what is going to be my need and focus going forward, and then start to prioritize everything. Because sometimes a lot of I've seen is, and even for myself, is just jump in right away and then come back later saying, "Oh, I went down the wrong tree. This is now I'm going to have to spend an extra year or two to come back and convince to do that." And it's like, that's
Yeah.
So really have that upfront idea before you start really diving in is going to be very helpful.
Right. So what do you spend a lot of your time on in terms of tools? I know it's probably going to differ for you because you're probably not going to have to do a screaming frog audit or deep crawl. Um,
Some of them, I've put them up.
okay.
I've
Well,
had them. Yeah, no, those are great tools. Whether it's Screaming Frog, Deep Crawl, Xenu, kind of. But my usual go-tos have been one that I advise is called SEO Radar, and this has saved me and as well as like my analysts countless of hours because it's basically a change dip for specific SEO themes. And so what's great for it, and this works for either your in-house or even for agencies, where it's like engineers make an update to pages you care about, don't tell you, and you're coming back a week later going, wait a second, what has happened? Why is the rankings drop? Well, this tool basically will tell you if you set up the page, you basically say, watch this page, it will tell you whenever the specific areas of the page are updated. But the title tag changes, URL suddenly no index, robot.txt blocks, whatever, boom, it will tell you that every time it's crawling it. So if you're crawling it every day or every week, you'll know. And this is a great way to kind of find out without when an engineer or somebody else changes without telling you.
now
Yeah.
let me just ask you a question on that. Does that correlate with any sort of rank tracking, so you can actually match the rankings increasing or decreasing based off the changes?
The tool allows you to run a kind of basic SEO test in there, so you could make a change, put in the dates, and see it, but it doesn't do it in any direct way to say this change and then here are the rankings. It's more purely kind of geared right now around here are the updates that have occurred. Are you aware of it? Yes, no, and then fix it if you're not aware.
Okay, so you might have to do some cross analysis with your rank tracking tool.
Well, yeah, but it's meant more of preventative. So it's being proactive in that, like, hey, did this change occur that you meant it to occur? This change occurred. Did you mean for this to occur? So it finds it right away so that in theory your rankings won't change if you fix it right away.
Okay, so that makes sense. And then you
Yeah.
can see any sort of redirects or no indexing that you're doing and all that good stuff.
All that good stuff. It does a code. It does a visual screenshots and stuff. So like you don't have to go to the Internet Archive and pray that the page is there. You've got, like it's beautiful and like both desktop and mobile. So like I can go back and say, oh, when did this change occur? Like 3 days ago, and Internet Archive is not going to have it right away. But this tool will have it, so I can go and check and like that's what changed. Okay, I can visually see it, so it's really nice.
Wow, that's really cool. I'm gonna have to check that out. Maybe I'll do a review on it for the channel so everybody else can see.
Yeah,
um,
that's one of my big ones. One of the ones I used to like, and well, whenever I was back in the day, was probably AWR for ranking changes, because it was like I could run it massively, tons of keywords, which for cheap was nice, which is unfortunately you don't get to see that much of it. Um, I think most of it is now online. So for me, it's having to use kind of more of the enterprise tools like Searchmetrics, many of the others to kind of track some of these ranking.
right.
Because
So
when I'm like, or I'll do it in half, but like when I'm doing at scale, I like to have clusters of keywords, like thousands of keywords in one group, not to check necessarily the individual rankings, but to check the overarching rankings of that group, so that when I make a change on the site, or when an algorithm changes in some way, I know which group it's for, whether it's like a specific product category, a specific page type, like a product, a comparison page. Those things I like to see, and so like if I have to build that out of the house to be able to track that, because unfortunately when you're at scale, like Google Search Console doesn't do enough, sadly. So uh, yeah, it's lacking. I wish it could do more, but that's just the state of things. So if I have to do it myself and get it built, or not myself per se, through engineers, those are the things that I've had to do so that I can appropriately see what's occurring. You got a large website; it's very difficult to keep an eye on a lot of stuff. So any type of tool that can reduce my amount of time and not be too expensive.
okay. So in terms of analytics and rank tracking, like we were just talking about,
Mm-hmm.
when you go and you do probably, I'm assuming, a monthly report, do you look at like specifically what you're working on in terms of bounce rates and click throughs and perhaps different rankings changing around those different pages that you're currently going for, or do you spend a lot of time just looking at everything? Because I feel like it's pretty easy to get lost in the sea of analytics that you can pretty much dive into these days.
Yeah, um, yeah. It depends on kind of what I'm gearing towards, depending on which companies. But usually, yeah, it's at the top level of keeping an eye on search volume, the impressions, the clicks, the click through rate, the sessions, and of course the rankings. So like those are kind of the fundamental areas of SEO, or just pure metrics. I mean, you could talk about bounce rate and indexation numbers. Um, those areas are as well kind of fun, and I wish again that Search Console had some better tools for that. So like those things as well are kind of the areas that I'll usually look at, because I need to kind of a general breath of what's going on, so that if my rankings drop and traffic is basically taking a hit, obviously all the stuff leading down the line of conversions, I'm going to see that impact, but I have to know higher up in the chain of metrics what the heck is happening. And having my site is usually, yeah, you're still looking at traffic and rankings, because you need to know where it's coming from and what keyword that might be affecting it. To not be able to look at that and not keep an eye on that, I think personally, it's just you're doing yourself a disservice in SEO. You have to have some of that information, and some of that means you're using a tool like SEMrush, which has been great for those types of top level tracking. And on the uh, yeah, I would say kind of that top level has been useful for making sure that I'm keeping an eye on it. Now, granted, of course, even then, I keep in mind the page type. So, yes, the conversion might be a value, or whatever the lead is going to be if it's like a more informational page. And so breaking that out by different types of segments means different areas of what I'm looking at. But the fundamental area still is usually going to be around the rankings and traffic associated to it.
Right. Okay. So in terms of on page and on-page link siloing more specifically, I hear a lot of questions. People are asking, okay, what should I link to? What should I do in order to promote my content on my website so Google finds it easier? Making sure that it's not more than 2 to 3 clicks in depth from the homepage. What do you recommend in terms of creating a link structure on your site that makes sense, where you're linking to your high authority or your most important content, but at the same time not overdoing it? Is there a certain way you focus on this, or do you kind of just set up your link silos so that they're at least pointing to other important pages, but not really looking at as much like the actual like page rank or page authority or whatever you want to call it being passed?
Mm-hmm. And this is in reference to internal links, right?
Yeah, so on page link building.
Okay. Yeah. Obviously, again, the type of site will vary. And so things you can look at, depending on the size of your site, you should take a look at kind of what are some of the websites that often are ranking that are pretty well known, and how is their SEO, their internal linking for SEO set up. When I've been at massive scale, I'm always thinking about, I guess the 3 types I usually think about when building an internal link structure is, this page should be able, like, what for every individual, whether it's an article or long tail kind of product content or comparison page content, it's what are the top pages, whether it's within that category or overall. What are the relevant content to this product or article, and what are the recent articles. So usually I have at least 3 clusters of internal links built in. Now, this is, of course, for a much larger scale, just because those are, at least from the way I look at it, it's both a user experience value, but also these are the ones that I want to really try to get effort to. So, for example, if I dive into that, top content, you want to make sure those things keep getting the links, keep floating, that they don't disappear. And if you can kind of break them down by the different categories, you can help them keep funneling to the right pages over time for that. The relevant, pretty makes sense. Just on the whole, you want to make sure you're linking to pages that are similar. And if you have a CMS that can handle internal tagging, it should be able to recognize which ones those are. And then the third one, recency. That part is to really just provide that lift right away to any new stuff, because if you don't, oftentimes once those articles are off the homepage, or blog homepage, or just it's very difficult for new stuff to rank. You start to funnel it to old stuff all the time, and the new stuff never gets a chance. So having that built in allows the new content to come up. Now that's the manual-ish process. There are companies out there that are trying to build in their own system and their own AI for that, their own like machine learning system. And I haven't had a chance to really play with those yet, but that's where it would be a fun test to see, like, okay, how does the type of structure that I've normally set up versus theirs differ, and what works potentially better, and maybe a mix of that might even be preferable.
Yeah, it's crazy how much you can actually test this stuff and get like maybe a 1% edge on somebody else based off, maybe something else that they probably included, like, for instance, the recent posts, or, repurposing their content. I mean, there's so much you could do. So before we keep going into that, because we can dive into so much of this stuff into great detail, I just have a couple more questions. We're actually already at almost 40 minutes, which went by really fast. So one of the questions was, who do you follow? And then the question after that is, how do you see SEO progressing?
Oh, I create, like, I usually have like an RSS list, and a variety of people on as well for Twitter. The people I follow, the SEM post is a pretty good one. I have to say, out of all the blogs that are out there these days, I think the SEM post has been actually really good. They usually have a good subject matter of and around SEO, and some good content from The people who write the posts about the subjects that's coming up can be both technical as well as recent news type areas. So lately, that's probably been my number one blog site. This is excluding like Search Engine Land or Search Engine Roundtable, or like kind of news oriented. But I put up there the SEO post for that. After that, then it's usually a spattering of a variety of individual bloggers. AJ Cohn's always a good one whenever he gets to write a post up, because it's always pretty thought provoking and kind of gets you to think about things outside of what you normally do, and that's a pretty good one. If I'm looking around, kind of trying to remember my list off, I'm not in front of my computer at the moment. If I want to go, huh?
Very shorts.
I put it more under the news category. So if something just pops up, then that's what it is. But it's not like he's not like the areas of like I want to learn something about SEO. It's more of like what's going on. Like
right.
That's usually like the news side. So yeah, his area is good for that. But for more like people I actually like follow for the purpose of SEO, usually it's like Glenn Gabe. He's good for kind of a lot of the more technical areas. If I want to follow, say, the link building side and some ideas, then it's either been Jason S. Cedre or Kaiser the Sage. And
can I interrupt you really quick? I just want to know, how much time do you think you spend either daily or weekly?
Well, the nice part is the way that I've set up my reading list is I just quickly browse the titles, because I set up since I was originally mostly in Firefox, I could do this. I had to put in an extension for Chrome, but basically all I do is I just open up my bookmarks tab, essentially, well, the bar, click on it, and then I just quickly view the titles. So I don't really spend much time initially looking at everything. I look at stuff every day, but I don't, with the titles, I can quickly see what's going on for that post and decide if I need to click in. And so maybe I'm looking at between 1 to 5 posts a day, at most of them pretty much reading, just because I can tell pretty quickly if this is going to be something that's worthwhile. I'm not having to scroll through kind of a long email and miss something. I separate stuff out pretty well with my bookmarks.
But in terms of like your average hours learning or reading per week, what would you say, how long you spend, and then what would you say would be like an ideal amount of time to spend for somebody who's getting started?
Nowadays, it's probably less than it was, just because most of the stuff is not very advanced for my use cases, or it's not too detailed. So I'd say it comes out probably an average of 30 minutes a week. 30 minutes a day a week, I should say. Probably on average, because it will vary. Some days will be nothing, and then one day somebody writes this massively long post. I'm like, oh my god, this is good, and I need to read through it.
Right.
So yeah, and then suddenly that's taken up more than the time limit it should have. But I'd say it probably around, probably maybe 30 minutes on average a day. If I had to take a guess what that is. I find it actually really important as an SEO to be up to date and follow this stuff so I can stay in them. Right. But when you're early on, I mean, it depends. If you're in house, you're having to, you have to spend the time for whatever your boss is giving you, and if you've got a good boss, hopefully he understands it. Learning, but it also depends on your role. If you're focused more on just pure content or just pure link building, you're not going to need to follow as many people.
Right.
The time you need to spend on them is going to be a lot less in comparison to learn about your area of SEO.
Right, especially if you're going into something like search engine marketing or maybe just one channel of social media. There's going to be a different time curve on what you should actually be spending your time on learning.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, that last question, what do you see in terms of, kind of where SEO is going? What do you see is going to be happening in the future?
Oh, Well, I see it as there's going to be a lot more expansion into other verticals. What we look at on the mobile side, having to actually focus, which I still think it's going to be the weirdest dichotomy. Just I'm blanking out on the right word here, but I'm going to spend my day on a laptop or on a desktop, and I have to remember and always focus of soon to be optimizing only for the mobile. That's going to be a really weird experience. Just trying to think about that all the time, tool sets that then have to all switch in theory going forward. I think it's gonna complicate things more. Because it's not just necessarily mobile SEO. Then you've got voice type of SEO. That's potentially going to be a more and more a bigger part of areas of what we work on, just because peripherance of AI's machine learning and the digital assistants is going to kind of change the field. So I think having a skill set that allows you to think outside of your SEO box, to be able to recognize that different areas of your skill set is going to be useful for websites that become kind of dominant in their world. So whether it's Yelp or Pinterest and images, and Amazon and e-commerce, these are going to be interesting mixtures because not all pure SEO, a mixture of paid stuff with SEO. And I think that part is going to become a larger focus on so many different things, which means the technical breadth is going to be more, might not be necessarily deep, but you having to understand all the technical areas that vary depending on the type of site that's needed is going to require a lot of legwork in that regard. So I think the technical side is only going to continue to increase. That's probably some of the areas I think it's going to be interesting to see. And if Google does really get as good as they like to kind of say they are with JavaScript, then having to understand how a page loads, the DOM, and when stuff loads, kind of all the intricacies of JavaScript and the breakdown of waterfall chart, how that works. That's going to probably weed out a lot of people. Diving into those areas is really time consuming right now. There's no good tool built for an SEO for those purposes, as far as I'm aware. So I think there's opportunity. And that's not one of the things I would like to try to build if I had to build a tool myself. But it would be an interesting area.
Right. And in terms of the opposite, which would be, what do you see Google more disvalue or not valuing as much? I can give you my own personal opinion on links. I know this is something that there's a lot of controversy on, and I actually get a lot of people somewhat angry at me for saying, look, I don't think Google's going to be keeping the link signals around as much in the future as a main ranking factor. What would you say?
It's tough. So I think the way I would look at it is not to say that links won't be as strong as I would say there would be more variety. I think there'll be more variety of factors that can play a part. So that as a percentage, the value of links might go down, but it's not something that they necessarily get rid of. If they can find more factors that can help to provide relevance, and this is leaving aside the whole brain machine learning and which factors play more larger roles. I think that's already occurring when you see it like brand queries in specific areas. Those parts are going to play a stronger emphasis over links, and I think that's kind of the situation you're starting to see more of.
Well,
Not necessarily that they're reducing the value just as a percentage. They're doing a better job of balancing what might go into really a strong amount of forwarding.
yeah, and let me just take it one step further and say, you know, I think what's going to happen isn't as much as Google's going to be disvaluing the links, but I think it's going to be uh, more SEOs not really valuing links as much as they start to realize that a lot of the stuff that you can rank for isn't necessarily link based, and you can usually, in my opinion, get further or get more mileage out of spending your time doing other things that isn't related to spending a bunch of time doing off-page SEO. That's my opinion. I mean, I'm fine. You know, it's fine. I I get so many disagreements on this, and it's fine. I don't. You know, it's not something that I pushing at all.
Right. No. Yeah, no, it'll be interesting. I think part of that is where things go, and is there a likelihood at some, even going to the extreme of saying, is there a point where search engines themselves just become a middleman for finding stuff, where it doesn't now matter what search engine you use because the AI will just do the research for you. Essentially, imagine you've got crowdsourcing bots essentially crawling each of the different search engines that are out there and then compiling that and giving you the answers you're looking for. Think of like all the devices that we have for Alexa, Home, Siri, and how many people know that like a lot of the Siri stuff is based through Bing? It's like disintermediation. I can't pronounce it tonight. That type of function where you can basically throw them away to be a blunt search engine, or like a blunt pipe of your internet, where it's like, I don't care what company it is, just give me it and that's all I need. Just, I don't need to care about that. That's probably, if anything, would be the scariest thing for SEOs. Now it's a completely different world in that situation. That's the much longer play, but something that is well considered.
Right. And just to justify kind of what I was saying, I don't think link building is a bad thing. I just think that if you look at SEO and you kind of understand that SEO is more of something you use as a long-term strategy versus, doing something like paid advertising, the whole thought process is that you're trying to create long-term value. And I see the potential to create, or I don't know, do more branding versus spending a lot of time doing link building, because what's going to, and sorry, I didn't finish my sentence on create like high quality posts, do branding through like social, do like things that are going to really provide also long-term value, because I think by creating those assets, you might not necessarily get the links in the beginning, and you might get all the people who are doing all the link building, outranking all your stuff. And perhaps in the beginning, it's going to be, very, very non-profitable. But I think in the long run, if more time is spent doing things that are kind of related to the whole omni-channel marketing around like what SEO is, so like, like I was just saying, like branding, remarketing, conversion rate optimization, understanding the psychology of what people are actually wanting in terms of their user intent when they hit the search engine for whatever their query is. When you start thinking that way, in my opinion, and you're basically building these assets around that instead of just links that, people don't even necessarily care about. If somebody goes to your site, they're not going, oh my God, how many links is going to this website? They're going, okay, is this what I want? Is this what I intended to find? And is there more information about this, or is there a brand that's backing this up? And is this brand actually selling stuff? And I think the more we can kind of go into that and spend less time trying to worry about who's linking to us it seems to me like the long-term strategy of that is more important.
Yeah, you made me think of a nice phrase: live by the link, die by the link. Um, I think you're right. I think you can see that. I think there was an article just showcasing this the other day where it was like you can do some generic searches, generic being like product-based searches, and the related searches at the bottom of the page potentially shows highlighted brands. Those highlighted brands means these are people who are actually searching for that brand and related to that keyword, which having that extra bonus, that's an extra link to your brand, that's a branding by Google already. And that's going to absolutely give you a leg up. Brands in and of themselves, people are more likely going to click on. They trust it intrinsically. You can, in theory, yes, you can do a lot of link building and build all that stuff, and then build a brand because you're ranking, and then you build something associated to it. But at some point, you have to make that switch. If Google cracks down on certain types of tactics, which they have over time, you haven't built a brand for the protection to be able to come back, and that's a large hit right then and there that you're going to have to crawl back from, while others finally start to, have that sustainable model that's slow but steady, and they win the race. So, I agree that having to think that holistically of building across the different channels, and it's not to say that, in my opinion, that link building doesn't matter. Like, there's the whole influencer marketing, there's the whole PR side and social media, all the stuff that can potentially build those links in the public area, plays all that parts together. And you may not want to just only focus as a part of it for SEO with links, but rather supplementing and thinking, okay, they're going to be doing this stuff anyway. How can I help to increase the likelihood of that we're going to get the links that these search engines value, to showcase it so it's not thrown away because of an implementation that a different team set up, or we didn't do a large outreach. I've seen situations where it's like, to them, marketing is only on site. Well, if you're just doing it on site, then how's the broader world going to hear about you? Or you've launched a new product. What's our market? Like, what's the PR? How are we getting people to talk about it? And if there's nothing, it's like, well, how then do we get this to rank? Nobody's talking about it. Nobody's then going to link to it. Nobody's going to push it. Google, is not going to then in turn think of it as valuable. That I think getting that across and swapping out some of the concepts or of terminologies and jargon of links to, and you're getting people, you want people to talk about it. I think that is what then, as an SEO, you're trying to get across and saying, here are potential ways to do that is beneficial for SEO and for the users in the end. So that's kind of the way that I would kind of agree with you in how I switch things up a bit.
Right. Cool. Right on, Micah. Well, we almost hit an hour. We're at 57 minutes. That was awesome. I really appreciate you coming on here. And we actually did have a few questions. I'm sorry for not acknowledging you guys, but we were in the midst of our very serious SEO conversation. One person actually said they use Zendesk now on their site, and they're pretty stoked about being able to see the IP and the location, areas clicked, and that stuff. So yeah, thanks again for coming on, man. Is there anything else you wanted to share?
No, I mean, if there are any questions you've left out, I'm happy to do a quick rapid fire answer if need be.
Yeah, we just had we had one of our guests say, they wanted to know. One of the questions was, what's better, SEO, Yoast, or all-in-one?
I love that debate. I was always partial to all-in-one SEO, but I think it's just for whatever you feel like works better for you.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that there's less code for all-in-one, or actually, maybe it's a different one, but I think one of the big complaints I hear about Yoast is the fact that they have a little bit of extra code that you actually end up needing to use, and a little bit of a load time. Even
I will say both in the end suck. Period.
Really?
I will. Oh yeah. Those. I mean, look at how out of date those things are. Like, you're telling me that these things can't go in and like I could go on a diatribe of like just they're coasting. I think both have been coasting for a while. There's these plugins could do so much more for some really good areas of SEO, but they just don't.
Yeah, well, that's the problem with a lot of the SEO industries. Even with people, you'll see they become very successful, and then even personally, I know that, um, you know, because I've ended up getting a good amount of people watching my videos and stuff, I haven't spent as much time trying to create original content because I've been, so busy with everything else that I'm doing. So, one of the other questions was, or comments was, I think it's relevance, quality, and organicness would be IMP. Not sure what that means, but I think what he's saying is in terms of the ranking, main ranking signals, it's in terms of relevance, quality, and some other factor. But
yeah, I could see that if you've got a system set up, it's just yeah.
Yeah.
And we were gonna have a lot of different opinions on that, but yeah, I can kind of see that. That wasn't a question, was it?
No, I was just saying as a comment.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's pretty much it. So yeah, if you guys want to hear more about Micah, he's actually, like I said, in another community called Dumb SEO Questions. He answers questions on a panel live, kind of like how we do it here. So if you guys ever want to ask any questions, you can head over there, and he'll actually be one of the people who will be answering one of your questions, hopefully.
Yeah, we've got it on Facebook as well now. So if you just feel more like more like putting the post up there and asking the question, feel free to do that. And I'm also on Twitter as well as Micah FK.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm going to end it. Micah, thanks again for coming on, and
For having me.
we'll call it a wrap.